Hey everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about grouping tables. Now grouping tables are perfect for when you need to report on overlapping categories. What do I mean by overlapping categories? Well, let's just say you got a bunch of customers over here, and over here you have a bunch of customer rewards programs. Maybe you've got like a VIP program or a super shopper program, things like that. You want to be able to click on the program and see all of the customers associated with it. The problem is an individual customer might be related to not one, but two different programs, which means you can't do this with a calculated column. You can, however, do it with the grouping table. They're very easy to build and they're very easy to work with. And I'm going to show you how to do both of those things right about now. To start off, I'm going to go ahead and show you what the problem looks like, what the thing we're trying to avoid looks like, by heading here to my Goofus tab. Right? So, in the Goofus tab, we're doing things wrong. We have a data model that's got three tables in it. We've got dim products, we've got dim customers, and we have fact sales. These are table visuals, but these are representing the actual tables in my data model, just so you can see them on one page, right? So for fact sales, I've got all my sales transaction, and each sales transaction is associated with both a customer ID and a product ID. That works just fine. And here in my customers table, dim customers, I've got all my different customers, C1 through 6. For each customer, I've got a name and what membership programs they belong to, right? So some customers are part of our VIP program, and some customers are part of our Big Savers program, right? The problem is if I want to look at all the customers associated with the VIP program, you might think I could add a slicer to this column right here, but it actually doesn't work very well. Because here it is, right? Here's that slicer based off of customer memberships. And there is a little checkbox for VIP, which is nice, but when I click on it, I'm going to get all of the people that are only in the VIP program. Jamar, who's in both programs, both VIP and Big Savers, actually won't show up if I click on this VIP. Right, so if I click on that, Jamar isn't there. This list of customers filters down fact sales, and I get 16.7 thousand. And an end user might think that they're seeing all of the VIP sales, but they're not. They're seeing just the sales for people in VIP, but not the Big Savers program. So that doesn't work very well. Now, I could tell my end user to go ahead and control-click on this other option right here so that I get the VIP and the people that belong to both, but that's really, really awkward. Likewise, if I come over here to my dim products table, right, I've got all my different products, P1 through 4. I got the name, coffee, chai, scone, muffin, and I've got the ad campaigns associated with each one of these products. The problem is that some products, in particular this chai, right, that actually is involved in both ad campaigns, both the AM Champions ad campaign and the Treat Yourself ad campaign. So if I want to see sales for all of the AM Champions product, I might think I could click on AM Champions, which is a slicer associated with this column right here. But I missed the chai because the chai is actually associated with both. I have to control-click on this guy right here to see them both, which is just really, really awkward. So here's how we solve it. We solve it with a grouping table, which is why the name of this video involves grouping tables, right? So I go over here. Here's what the solution looks like. We add two tables, grouping tables, right? A grouping table behaves a little bit like a fact table, right? It has a many-to-one relationship with the dimension tables. And by that I mean for every row here in customers, there might be multiple rows in the group membership. The reason we have that is because a particular customer might belong to multiple membership programs. So Jamar here, right, customer number 4, he belongs to both VIP and Big Savers. And if we come down here, we'll see that C4, right, that's his customer number, has not one but two rows, one for Big Savers and one for VIP, right? So basically, we split this row into two, right? And so we have a table that has all of the different memberships. Well, that's kind of an awkward sentence. All the different, one row for each person belonging to a membership. Therefore, if I click on VIP, right, down here, based off of that customer membership, I get a list of all the customers associated with the VIP membership program, which includes Jamar, which is exactly what I want to. So that I can have a nice slicer where I can say, show me Big Savers, and I see all the Big Savers, and I say, hey, show me the VIP customers, I see all the VIP customers, and both of these membership programs include Jamar. So that number right there includes that Jamar right there, which is exactly what we want. Right. Similarly, if I come over here to dim products, right, here we've got 4 rows for dim products in our group ad campaign. We have many rows in this grouping table for each row in this dim products table, potentially, right? In particular, there for chai,
right, where we've only got one row in dim products, we have 2 rows for grouping ad campaign. That way, that product number 2, Chai, can have 1 entry for its membership in AM Champions, that ad campaign, and 1 row for the Treat Yourself campaign. So when I click on AM Champions, it'll produce this list of P1 and P2, right? Which is going to, because of a bidirectional filter that we introduce, it's going to filter down our dim products table to P1 and P2, right? Which will then filter down fact sales, and we'll get our 15.92 thousand, which is all of the sales for our AM Champions, including the Chai, which belongs to both ad campaigns. Now, when I click on Treat Yourself, right, Chai is still being counted in here, right? It's still being counted because there were 2 rows for Chai. There's 1 for AM Champions and 1 for Treat Yourself. And so when I click on it, it produces this list of products right there, including product 2. Because of the bidirectional filter, that filters down dim products, right, which in turn filters down fact sales. So we're going to introduce 2 new tables, grouping ad campaign and grouping memberships, and then we'll add bidirectional filters between them and our 2-dimension tables. And that's how this whole thing is going to work. Okay. So that's how mechanically it works when we're done. Let's actually go build these things, right? So I'm going to pop over here where it's not done. And we'll see that we've got some places to drop stuff off. I'm actually going to go build those tables in Power Query. So to do that, I'm going to pop up here, and I'm going to click on Transform Data. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways you could do this, depending on how the original data is stored, right? So if I come over here to SQL Customers, right, imagine that this is my customers table in my SQL database, right? Here, I've got that customer membership, and I have a comma delimited list of all the memberships that customer belongs to, okay? So to get my grouping table from this, I can actually just use basically some built-in features of Power Query. It'll make it real easy. So I'm going to right-click on SQL Customers. I'm going to do Reference, which is going to create this query right here pointing at the customers table. And I'm actually going to drag it here into this group for Motto Demo just to keep things a bit more organized. And I'm going to rename this, right? So this is going to be our group, our grouping table, and this is going to be for memberships, but we already have a query called group memberships, so let's call this one group memberships demo. There we go. Okay, so now how do we get this guy to work? Well, it's pretty easy, right? I'm actually not going to need this customers table, so I'm going to go ahead and, in fact, I'll do it this way. I'm going to left-click on customer ID. I'm going to control-click on customer memberships. Then I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to remove other columns. There we go. So now we have the customer ID and the customer membership. All we really need to do is split this row 4 right here, C4. We need to split it into 2 rows, one for BIP and one for Big Savers. And that's pretty easy. So I'm going to right-click on customer memberships. I'm going to go to split column, and I'm going to choose split by delimiter, right? The delimiter is the single character or characters that tell me where the text stops being one thing and becomes something else. And if we'll notice, there is a comma and a space between our customer memberships. So my delimiter, I'm going to choose custom, and I'm going to do comma space. In this very simple example, there's only one customer that belongs to 2 different membership programs. We could actually have, thousands of customers and hundreds of membership programs, and there'll be a comma and a space between each one, or whatever you happen to have in your data model. Okay, so we've set the delimiter to comma and space. This part's pretty important. I'm going to twirl open advanced options, right? I don't want to split it into columns, which is how you probably usually do it, where you end up with multiple columns. I want to split it into multiple rows, right? And when I hit OK, what's going to happen is it's going to find that comma and a space, and it's going to take this row right here and split it into 2 rows, right? One of them will say C4 and VIP. The other will say C4 and Big Savers. When I click OK, there we go. Simple as that. There we go. And notice C4 appears twice. Easy, easy. Okay, so let's go ahead and load that one, and then, let's spell membership correctly. Sorry, I got a new keyboard, and I'm really kind of getting used to it. Group memberships. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit close and apply. So I'm going to load group memberships demo. There we go. I've got group memberships demo right there. I'm going to head over here to my model viewer. Right? And we'll notice, right, I've had what I had before with fact sales, dim customers, and group memberships. Pretend that isn't there, right? this is the table that we just made, this group memberships. And notice it automatically detected the relationship between these two tables based on the name of the key, right? If I hover over it, we'll see it matched customer ID to customer ID. Let's pretend that that didn't happen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete. Let's say that when I brought that in, it didn't auto-detect the relationship because maybe you have that turned off, which is probably a good idea. I need it turned on because I do a lot of demos where it gets used. So I'm going to take customer ID up here, and I'm going to drag it onto customer ID down here. There we go. So now I've got a relationship between group memberships, right, the demo version, and dim customers. However, there's one more thing I have to do before I leave, right? Right now, the filtering is one directional, right? So we have a one-to-many relationship between these two tables. There are many rows in the grouping table for each row in the customers table. That part's correct. Can't change that part. But right now, if we have a filter on dim customers, it filters our grouping table, but the opposite isn't true. If we have a filter on our grouping table, it does not move up and filter our dim customers table because we have a one-directional filtering set up right there, one-directional relationship. So I'm going to double-click on the relationship, and I'm going to change my cross-filtering direction from single to both. Now, there's some caveats around this, and I'll go over those at the end of the video, but in this particular scenario, it's actually pretty safe. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, good. So now I have that bi-directional filtering set up. I can head back out here. And there's dim customers right there. Let's go find our group membership. There we go. And so I'm going to take customer membership. I'm going to click on this slicer right there. There's customer memberships. I'm going to drag this into the field section. There we go. Now I've got Big Savers and VIP. Now, if I click on Big Savers, this will produce a list of customer IDs here in my grouping table corresponding to C4 and C4, 5, and 6, which will travel up via the bidirectional relationship to dim customers, filter down dim customers to just those customers, C4, 5, and 6, and that filter will travel down to fact sales, so we'll just be looking at these sales for the Big Savers customers. And likewise, if I click on VIP, right, this will produce a list of customers C1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, based on the table we got there, which will travel up the bidirectional relationship to dim customers. That'll filter down our customers here to C1, 2, 3, and 4, and that will filter down to fact sales, and then our sales measure will return 21,000, just the sales for VIP. Okay, so that's one example where you've got comma delimited values in your table, and you want to split it out that way. There's another scenario that's a little trickier, but is frankly probably more common. Let's go look at that, and that's going to be here for dim products. This is going to be where we demo it. So I'm going to head back here to Power Query, and we will notice in customers, right, we have customer memberships, and we've got a comma in there, so we've got a comma delimited version. The other thing that you will see fairly often is something that looks more like this. For the demo, this actually for the demo, if you head here to SQL Products, it's comma delimited here too, and we could do it that same way. But more often than not, you will see a scenario that looks like this, where you don't have a column that looks like this. What you have is a column, or I should say a table, that's called a bridge table, right? So with the bridge table, we have the keys from both tables, both the products table and a potential ad campaign table, right? So down here, we've got our ad campaign table where we've got two ad campaigns, ad campaign 1 and ad campaign 2, AM champions and treat yourself. We also have this bridge table, which has all of the intersections of products and ad campaigns. So we could see here, product 1 belongs to ad campaign 1, and that's it. Product 2 belongs to ad campaign 1 and ad campaign 2, and product 3 belongs to ad campaign 2, and product 4 belongs to ad campaign 2 again, okay? So this is the right way to store data in a real database. Because of the way data is stored in Power BI, we actually don't need to load our data like this, right? So this is a bridge table. We're going to create a grouping table or a ramp table, like half of a bridge. So I'm going to start with my bridge table here. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to click Reference. And I'm going to drag this new query down here to Model Demos. I'll drop it right there. And let's call this one Group Ad Campaigns. Group Ad Campaigns. There we go. Oh yeah, I have to call it Demo. We already have one called Group Ad Campaigns. Okay, good. Now, this is a little trickier to think about. The good news is this is almost easier to execute. So we've got our bridge table right here. Now all I have to do is head up here to Home, go to Merge Queries, and I'm going to merge it with the Ad Campaigns table. see, where's my ad campaign? SQL ad campaigns. There we go. So basically what I want to do is I want to do a left outer join. I basically want here where it says ad campaign, I want that to show up right there. So I'm going to do the joining based off of the ad campaign ID column. So I'm going to click there, and then I'll click there, right, to connect on those two columns. And I'm going to use the left outer join because it's the most like VLOOKUP. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So now I end up with this scenario right here where I've got the bunny ears. Just like always, we hit the bunny ears to expand that column. I already have ad campaign. I don't need the, I already have ad campaign ID. I don't need that. I want ad campaign, and I don't want to prefix it with SQL ad campaigns dot ad campaign. So I'm going to uncheck this. I'm going to click OK. There we go. So now I've got my ad campaigns, AM Champions and Treat Yourself, and I've got all the product IDs associated with each one. The only thing I really don't need is this ad campaign ID. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on this and click Remove. Right? And now I've got my grouping table. Just as easy as that. Right? Notice I've got all my ad campaigns and the product IDs associated with each one. And notice that product 2 appears twice, one for the two different ad campaigns it belongs to, both AM Champions and Treat Yourself. So I go ahead, hit close and apply. And wait a second. There we go. I've got my new table over here. Before I can add it, I have to go set up the relationship. It probably auto-detected it, but if it didn't, yeah, there we go. It auto-detected it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to take this new grouping table for the ad campaigns, and I'm going to drag it over here. Notice it already auto-detected the relationship. Let's pretend that it didn't by deleting this. There we go. Delete. And let me zoom in just a little bit more so you can see it a little better. There we go. So now, to set up the relationship between the DIM products table and the ad campaigns grouping table, I'm going to go find my product ID column, and I'm just going to left-click and drag product ID on top of product ID. And when I do, I set up the relationship, but I'm not done. I'm not done, because the idea is we're going to have a slicer based off of ad campaign, and it needs to travel up to DIM products before it can travel down to fact sales, right? Because of that, we're going to need to enable bi-directional filtering. So to do that, I'm going to double-click on the relationship, and I'm going to change the cross-filter direction from single to both. And I hit OK, and now I'm done. Before I did that, filters from DIM products would travel both to fact sales and down to grouping, which is fine, but it's not what I need. Before, if I had a filter here on grouping, it would not travel up, but because I've got bi-directional filtering set up, it will travel up to DIM products and then travel back down to fact sales. Notice here with fact sales, all of the relationships to fact sales are one directional. We'll cover that in a little bit, but that's really important. Having these guys bi-directional isn't nearly as bad. Okay, so I head back out here to my canvas, and now I can open up my group ad campaign demo, click on my little slicer right here, take ad campaign, I'm going to drag it right there onto my slicer, and now I've got two selections, one for AM Champions and one for Treat Yourself. And if I click on Treat Yourself, this is a slicer on the grouping table. It filters down that grouping table to just the product IDs associated with Treat Yourself, which is products 2, 3, and 4. I know that because when I click on this, the list it produces travels up this bi-directional filter here to DIM products, filtering it down to P2, 3, and 4, right, which are all the products associated with Treat Yourself, which then in turn travels down this one-directional relationship to fact sales to bring our sales down to just the Treat Yourself sales transactions. So now end users have a real nice experience where if they've got these sort of overlapping groups, right, where a single customer can belong to multiple memberships or a single product can belong to multiple ad campaigns, they could just click on the one membership or the one ad campaign and the filters behave the way that an end user expects. Now, a couple other thoughts before we're done. Anytime that you enable bidirectional filtering, you are always going to introduce the possibility for confusion within your model, right? If you can avoid it, if you can fully avoid it, your life is always going to be a little bit easier if you have no bidirectional filtering. However, there are situations where you could turn it on and it's not that dangerous, and this is one of those scenarios. If you have one grouping table per dimension table with bidirectional filtering, that's actually not too bad. That's actually not too bad, right? The filter will travel up to the products table and then it will travel back down. to the fact table, right? Now, the caveat here is avoid writing DAX, specifically DAX that uses the calculate function to manipulate filters on this table right here. That's where you'll start to get into trouble. But folks tend not to do that, so it's actually not too big of a problem. Just be a little careful around that, right? Now, you may run into a scenario where there's multiple different ways you want to group products. So you might want to have 1, 2, 3 different grouping tables for 3 different arbitrary ways that you could group products. That is more dangerous than the scenario that I've got here, right? So that's 2 or more grouping tables for a single dimension table. It's more dangerous, but it's still not too bad because we have a one-directional relationship between the dimension table and the fact table, right? That's what's really kind of saves our hides, okay? So the more of these grouping tables you introduce, the more careful you have to be using the calculate function, dealing with the dimension table, or particularly the grouping tables, but it can still work okay. What you never, ever, ever want to do, like I can't even think of a good scenario where it's a good idea, right? The thing you want to really, really avoid, maybe I'll rephrase it and say it that way, never say never, but the thing you really want to avoid is turning on bidirectional filtering between a dimension table and a fact table, right? As long as your fact tables are only connected with one-directional relationships, the confusion introduced tends to be isolated within sort of the dimensions themselves, which tends to not be too big of a problem. Where you really get into trouble is when people turn bidirectional filtering on there, and then a filter up here will travel there, and there. And if there's filters here, they'll do the same thing, and it becomes very, very confusing. It's almost like a game of ping pong with the filters and how they work. It becomes very difficult to understand what's going on. But as long as you keep the relationships connected to the fact table as one-directional, you should be pretty good, and if you could do it, try not to have more than 1 grouping table per dimension table. And if you don't need a grouping table, I'm not sure why you're watching this video, but if you don't, you could go ahead and not do it at all. Okay, so that's a nice brief introduction to grouping tables. I use these things all the time. They're super duper helpful. They make for a really nice experience for end users. I sure do hope that video was helpful. And you know what? I will see you in the next video.